Today, we will be looking for the ghost of Marilyn Monroe, the most beautiful woman of an era, who made her name history in gold letters. Yeah, you didn't hear wrong, the ghost. The blonde beauty, who pursued many men during her lifetime, is actually an ordinary event for her to be pursued by her ghost after her death. She was followed by world-famous actors, politicians, and rich people. Have you ever heard of Marilyn Monroe's ghost wandering around in a hotel in America? First, let's take a look at the famous star's life story, which is like a movie. As the pieces of a puzzle come together, details that will astonish you beyond the ghost claim will be revealed. The world knew her as the dumb blonde, but those close to her say that Marilyn Monroe was not stupid at all. The archives prove that the world-famous star's life story was full of pain. Marilyn Monroe was born on June 1, 1926 in Los Angeles. Her real name is Norma Jeane Mortenson. Marilyn Monroe's difficulties in life began even before she was born. A few weeks before the birth of the famous star, her father abandoned her mother. Her mother, who was about to give birth, was psychologically disturbed by this incident and lost her mind. When her mother was committed to a mental hospital, the little girl was left in the middle. After this situation, Marilyn started to grow up in an orphanage. In the written sources and interviews she gave, reflections of the pain of his childhood began to emerge. During her life in orphanages, Marilyn Monroe occasionally admitted that she was subjected to a lot of sexual abuse and emotional pressure. She was very young when she left the orphanage. When she was 16, she married James Daugherty, a 21-year-old aircraft mechanic. So it was a marriage of convenience. Marilyn Monroe, who was sexually abused in orphanage, thought that her life, which had turned into hell, would be saved by this marriage. After her marriage, Marilyn immediately went to work in a factory and started her life. The 16-year-old girl, who went to the factory early every morning, met a photographer at the factory. The photographer was mesmerized by her magical beauty. Perhaps sensing that a factory worker would become Marilyn Monroe, he took photographs of her and arranged for them to be published in a magazine. When the magazine was published, many agencies and fashion designers asked, "Who is this girl?" because she had both beauty and a tremendous star energy. The little girl, whose life began to change after the magazine pose she gave, changed her name at the age of 20. Now everyone knew her as Marilyn Monroe. Officials at 20th Century Fox, the world's largest film production and distribution company, gave her the stage name Marilyn Monroe because they found her previous name too long. However, the famous star was not happy with the name Marilyn at first, even saying, "I don't even know how to spell Marilyn." The famous star, whose mother lost her mind shortly before her birth, grew up without a mother, but chose the Monroe part of her name herself, as it was her mother's maiden name. It is not known for certain who Marilyn Monroe's father was. Charles Stanley Gifford is the man claimed by Marilyn's mother to be her father. However, Gifford's family still claims they have no connection to Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe, who grew up without a father while her mother was in a mental hospital, did not break away from life despite all the drama she experienced. She appeared in front of the camera for his first motion picture in 1947. Marilyn's first film was The Shocking Miss Pilgrim. Marilyn appeared in this movie for a moment as a telephone operator. So she was not in the lead role as you might have guessed. The first marriage of Marilyn Monroe, who was looking for roles in movies and struggling to become a star, ended during this period. The famous star made her second marriage to Joe DiMaggio in 1954. Joe DiMaggio did not approve of Marilyn's career. He often expressed that he preferred his wife not to work. Marilyn Monroe did not like this situation at all. And please look carefully at this photo. Behind the scenes of this pose that introduced Marilyn Monroe to the whole world lies a great drama. Marilyn Monroe, who starred in the movie The 7-Year Itch, had so much light on the set during the shooting of the famous fan scene that her dress was insufficient to cover her body. Her husband Joe DiMaggio, who came to the set, was so angry at this situation that he inflicted violence on Marilyn that same evening. Marilyn Monroe, whose second marriage did not work out either, married Arthur Miller in 1956. This marriage lasted 6 years. After 6 years, Marilyn Monroe divorced her third husband. Marilyn Monroe, who was abused in orphanages as a child and experienced great disappointment in her 3 marriages, started to live in love with world-famous singer Frank Sinatra. According to information in the magazine archives, Marilyn Monroe liked to walk around naked at home. One night, Marilyn entered the living room by naked, where Frank Sinatra was playing poker with his friends, and Sinatra was infuriated by this scene. Marilyn Monroe did not only hate men because of the violence she had suffered. All her life she dreamed of getting out of Los Angeles and settling in New York, the only city she had ever loved. Although she lived in New York for a while, it always remained her temporary home. In fact, before she became famous, her dungeon-like life, unhappy marriages and turbulent romances had secretly caused her to collapse. Her psychiatrist Dr. Ralph Greenson diagnosed Marilyn with borderline paranoid schizophrenia. In such a difficult life, it's hard to maintain one's sanity. Marilyn Monroe, who added fame to her fame day by day, was experiencing a secret unhappiness. Even though she won awards and earned a lot of money, something was missing in her life. At one point, her name was involved in rumors of love with the then American President Kennedy. For this reason, the FBI started to follow Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe, who realized very early that she was being followed thanks to her strong paranoid feelings, boasted of her ability to outwit FBI agents. But no one believed the stories she told. At that time, she was considered mentally ill. Marilyn Monroe became obsessed with the Kennedy family, with whom she became very close. After John Kennedy refused to see her after a while, she persistently called the White House and tried to go to him, even though he was not answering her phone. And Marilyn died on August 4, 1962. Among the reasons for the death of the famous star, there were many claims that she may have committed suicide, that the FBI may have been involved, but even today, the exact cause of her early death is unknown. In 2006, the FBI released 97 more documents on Marilyn Monroe, which were designated as Homeland Security under the Freedom of Information Act, and reported that they still have countless undisclosed documents and files. So, did the famous star die in his Los Angeles home at the age of 36 from a drug overdose? Although her death was officially reported as a possible suicide caused by an overdose of barbiturates, there have been many speculations and conspiracy theories about the cause of death. Monroe's body was then handed over to her ex-husband Joe DiMaggio, and she was buried in Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery on August 8, 1962, with a funeral service organized by him. Let's talk about ghosts. We tried to summarize Marilyn Monroe's life briefly. Before Marilyn Monroe was born, her father abandoned her and her mother. Her mother lost her mind because of this event, which happened a few weeks before the birth. Marilyn Monroe grew up in orphanages and was subjected to sexual abuse. The loves of Marilyn Monroe, who could not find happiness in her 3 marriages, ended with scandals. Her death was also controversial. Anyone who has been to America has surely heard of the historic Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel in California. Named after the President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt, this hotel opened its doors for the first time on May 15, 1927. This 12-story hotel with 300 rooms and suites cost $2.5 million to build at the time. The hotel is still operated by the Thompson Hotel chain. This hotel is rumored to be haunted. Marilyn Monroe, who often came to the Roosevelt Hotel in Los Angeles during her rise to fame, tried to overcome her most difficult times and depressions in this hotel. While an army of press was waiting at the door, she would sometimes lock herself in her room for days without eating, not answering anyone's phone calls, canceling film shoots if necessary. Many admirers believe Marilyn Monroe's soul wanders through this painful room. While this may seem superstitious to some, spiritualists often bring up the idea that extra-human beings roam among us. Several guests who stayed at this hotel in years past have claimed that the ghost of Marilyn Monroe haunts this hotel and that they have seen her. A few fans even spotted Marilyn Monroe in her famous white dress around the hotel, but we think this is a bit far from the truth. Could it be that Marilyn Monroe's spirit in this hotel, whose life has been turned to hell, angry at her father, unhappy with the men she's been through, and lost her life in so many unknowns? What do you say?